Hey guys, it's Al. I'm reading Meteors by National Geographic. Streaks of light. Every day, thousands of small space rocks enter Earth's atmosphere. Together, these meteoroids weigh more than 9 buses. But don't worry, most space rocks never hit the ground. They burn up as they fall through the atmosphere, and that creates a fiery streak of light scientists call meteors. Some people call meteors shooting stars or falling stars, but a meteor is very different from a star. Most stars are so far away that we can never visit them. They burn bright for billions of years. Most of the meteors we see are about 60 miles away, and their glow lasts just for a few seconds. Why do meteors light up the night sky? Or think about it like this: on cold days, you can warm your hands by rubbing them together. You create heat because a force called friction is at work. Friction can be created in Earth's atmosphere too. Some meteoroids cruise towards our planet at more than 1,500,000 miles an hour. At a pace, as a space rock rubs against the gases in the atmosphere, it creates heat. All that heat makes it glow. Not all meteoroids burn up completely as they plummet towards Earth. The instant a space rock lands, scientists call it a meteorite. Most meteorites are no bigger than a grain of sand, but some are as big as a boulder. Scientists divide meteorites up into 3 categories. Stony meteorites. These are most common meteorites on Earth, but they're hard to spot. They look very similar to Earth's rocks. Iron meteorites. These meteorites are shiny, so it's easy to tell that they're from out of this world. They're mostly made of 2 metals, iron and nickel. Stony iron meteorites. These meteorites are also easy to spot, but they aren't very common. They're chunky mixtures of metal and rock. Check out all these record holding meteorites. Hoba, where it landed, Namibia. Hoba is the largest known meteorite in the world. It's about 9 feet long, 9 feet wide, and 3 feet tall. A farmer found the meteorite while he was plowing a field. Nagata, where it landed, Nagata, Japan. What's this space rock's claim to fame? It's the remains of the oldest meteorite strike that can be dated exactly. It fell on May 19, 861. That's more than 1,150 years ago. Gibeon, where it landed, Namibia. Gibeon created more rubble than any other meteorite when it hit the ground. Pieces of space rock are spread over an area almost as large as the state of Maryland, USA. Cape York, where it landed, Greenland. When this meteorite struck Earth, it broke into several giant pieces. You can see the largest chunk, which weighs more than 4 elephants, at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, USA. It's the biggest meteorite on display in that museum. Where do meteoroids come from? To find out, you'll need to climb into a spacesuit and get ready for a long, long journey. We're heading into space. Earth is a part of the solar system. The sun is at the center of our solar system, and other objects orbit it. The sun, some planets, a bunch of asteroids. Does our solar system end there? Not by a long shot. The planets are surrounded by a huge area of space called the Kuiper belts. And that's not all. A region known as the scattered disk overlaps part of the Kuiper belt, and it stretches far, far out into space. At the very edge of our solar system is an even bigger area called the Oort cloud. In the asteroid belt, Kuiper belt, scattered disk, and Oort cloud all contain huge numbers of orbiting objects. At least 2 million rocky asteroids orbit in the asteroid belt. Many others share an orbit with Jupiter or Mars. The Kuiper belt contains at least 1 trillion icy small objects, and the Oort cloud may contain as many as 2 trillion. Some of those orbiting objects break apart and become the pieces of meteoroids that eventually enter Earth's atmosphere. From asteroid to meteoroid. As asteroids move through space, they crash into each other like bumper cars. Small bits break off and become meteoroids. Most of the time, these new meteoroids stay in the same orbit as the asteroid they came from. But when the meteoroid does get knocked out of its orbit, it may be attracted by the gravity of a planet nearby, such as Earth. Meteoroids also come from the small objects in the Kuiper belt, scattered disk, and Oort cloud. These objects have rocky cores and icy surfaces. When they get knocked out of these regions and travel towards the sun, they give off gas and dust. Scientists call them comets. A comet's nucleus keeps on orbiting the sun, but material from its long dust trail gets left behind. The material becomes tiny meteoroids. Most of the meteoroids that enter Earth's atmosphere come from comets. As Earth orbits the sun, it follows the same path year after year. About a dozen times during that journey, it passes through streams of leftover dust from the various comets. For a few nights, hundreds of dusty bits enter Earth's atmosphere and burn up. The result is a beautiful display we call a meteor shower. Eight cool things about space rocks. 1. About 12,000 dust-sized meteoroids enter Earth's atmosphere each night. 2. Many meteoroids look orangey red or white to viewers on Earth, but some look green or yellow. 3. A meteoroid appears brighter than Venus is called a fireball. 4. Meteoroids are usually named after the place where they're found. 5. More meteors can be seen in the hours before sunrise than in the hours after sunset. 6. The meteorite's dust trail left by a comet can be more than 100 million miles long. 7. The rock and metal in most meteorites are about 4.6 billion years old. 8. Bulletproof material helps protect the International Space Station from meteoroids. Most of the meteoroids that land on Earth come directly from asteroids. The asteroids are also the force behind the meteors that came from the Moon and Mars. When two asteroids clash, one of them may get knocked out of its orbit, and if its new path comes across the Moon's orbit, boom! Holes called craters mark the spots where the asteroids have hit the Moon. During these strikes, bits of the Moon fly into space and become meteoroids. Sometimes those rocky bits enter Earth's atmosphere and land on our planet. Like the Moon, Mars has been struck by many meteoroids, and some of those strikes produce meteoroids too. Some of the meteoroids are still orbiting close to Mars, but others were knocked out of orbit. Over time, gravity and other forces moved some Martian meteoroids into Earth's atmosphere. Many of the meteorites burnt up, but a few were large enough to land on Earth as meteorites. So far, scientists have identified 124 meteorites that come from Mars. Most of Earth is covered with water, so many meteorites fall into the ocean. Some land in forests or deserts or other places where people don't live. But once in a while, a meteorite causes damage that people will notice. In 1982, Wanda and Robert Donahue of Weatherfield, Connecticut, USA, heard a strange thud in their living room and rushed to investigate. They couldn't explain the hole in the ceiling until they spotted a grapefruit-sized meteorite that had rolled under a piece of furniture. In 1992, Michelle Knopp was startled by a crash outside her home in Peekskill, New York, USA. When she ran outside, she discovered that the football-sized meteorite had struck her family car. In 2010, a meteorite surprised Dr. Frank Ciampi when it crashed into his office in Lorton, Virginia, USA. The fist-sized space rock is now on display at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., USA. Buildings and cars are fairly large, so it's no surprise that we sometimes hear about meteorites hitting them. But has a space rock ever hit a person? Could a meteorite hit you? Yes, in fact, maybe one already has. Most meteorites are no bigger than a speck of dust. It means you probably wouldn't even notice if one plopped down on your head. What about bigger meteorites? Don't worry. Only about 10 people in the whole world have ever been struck by a meteorite large enough that they've noticed, and none of them were seriously hurt. Many scientists spent their whole careers studying space rocks. Dr. Bill Cook, head of NASA Meteoroid Environment U.S. office in Huntsville, Alabama, USA, tracks meteors as they zip across the night sky. Cook used a network of 12 cameras in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and New Mexico to shoot videos of meteorites on clear nights. Then he determined each meteoroid's speed, where it came from, and where it might have produced a meteorite. What a cool job. Other scientists collect meteorites that have landed on the ground. Space rocks can fall anywhere on Earth, but they're easiest to find in two places: hot deserts and frigid Antarctica. Scientists can spot them on the plantain sand or white ice. Every year, the National Science Foundation sends teams of scientists to search for meteorites in Antarctica. In the past 30 years, these teams have found more than 1,600 meteorites. Scientists aren't the only ones who spend time hunting for meteorites. So do a lot of other people, including some curious kids. Would you like to find meteorites near your home? Many people look for years and never find a space rock, but you might get lucky. You could be the first person in your town to find a meteorite. If you think you've got one, ask the geology department at your local university.